Is nice an insult?
No, it really isn't. I mean, I don't know.
Okay.
Do people say, he's so nice, or he's too nice?
Yeah.
Or he's too honest?
Yeah. Well, there's that.
Yes.
I would say that Christopher Collet is the perfect example of nice.
He is a nice guy.
Because he's interesting, he's fun, he's compelling, he's accomplished, and he's kind. He's not one of these diva jerks that we have heard about or fear we
I'm
might
right
become.
here. I'm right here.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
He's not that.
Yeah, it is.
You're funny.
It is funny. Everyone who's met him that is friends of mine are like, Chris is a cool guy. He's a great guy. Yeah, and the other thing that I think that they learn is he's also a really smart guy. Like he's really he's a very well-educated, well-spoken guy, and he doesn't carry himself with that kind of attitude, which is nice. It's a nice combination. So yeah. If you're lucky enough to be friends with him, that's good for you.
Well, I can't wait to continue with part 2 of our conversation.
I know, me too. So you know what we should do?
What's that?
Let's get to it.
Welcome to the Heart of the Cards, a conversation about creativity, inspiration, and dealing with what we're dealt.
Hey, this is Dan Green.
And Eric Stuart.
And this is episode 28, part 2, with a very wonderful man, Christopher Collet.
Christopher Collet, ladies and gentlemen.
Hey, guys. How you doing?
We're good.
Very happy to be here.
Me too.
Yeah. So in our part 1, we talked a lot about earlier influences in the development of your career and your work as an actor, your art. And I'd love to pick it up right from there and get into the latter part or the linking part of that and everything that brings you up into this moment today. So I feel like here's your homework assignment. Cover all of that eloquently in about 45 minutes. And we also structure things, as listeners will know. Occasionally we refer to the hero's journey to help give us, some way to focus. So, and we talked about some challenges, some mentor stuff, the call to adventure, what inspired you to walk this path. If you have something in mind that you want to start with, that's great. Or I could give you something to use as a focus. What would you like?
Yeah, sure. If you've got something to use as the focus, nothing's popping into my head.
Yeah. So I know that you are happily married.
Yes.
And you have a family, which is, as most people would say, probably the most important part of their life, and the career is, the rest. But that reminds me of this classic element in the hero's journey where they encounter the goddess, who is a person in the hero's journey who can offer a degree of inspiration as well as support. I'm not saying that your wife has to be exactly that, but how does that idea factor into your experience?
I think it makes a lot of sense. We've been together for quite some time now.
Ever?
Yeah. So we met in 1998 and then got married in 2005. So, she's always been an inspiration to me, but that has definitely evolved over the years. We met, strangely enough, playing husband and wife on a TV show. So, art imitating, I guess, life imitating art, I guess you could say
right.
that.
Or at least TV.
Yeah. Right, at least TV, exactly. I didn't want to be crass about it, but yeah.
No. I'll be crass. But no, that's lovely. Was it a show that was memorable in any other way, or just another TV thing?
I mean, the whole experience of shooting it was a lot of fun. We got to go down. I was living in LA at that time as well, and we actually auditioned together. And what was one of the things that was memorable was the session was run by this, veteran casting director named Barbara Clayman, who was just such a character. And once we, wound up getting married, we got back in touch and let her know. And she was like, oh, yes, I put hundreds of couples together or whatever. So
That was
right.
she, regular for her.
She was funny, but we met at the audition, and then we lived in LA, but shot it down in San Diego. So it was somewhat of a paid vacation. It was great. We got to be down there for the week shooting the episode. Had a lot of fun, and the rest is history.
Mm-hmm. And you have 3 children?
We do. Yeah, we've got 3 kids. 2 boys and a girl. So our eldest is 15. Our middle is the daughter, and she's 12. And then the youngest is 8. And it's interesting. They really, they're like 3 true individuals, completely different interests. Our eldest is sort of the science math guy. Our daughter in the middle is very much the musical theater, always doing a production of Little Mermaid or whatever it is. And then the youngest guy is like the guy. He's, had not played baseball before last year and is now somewhat of like a baseball prodigy. He's playing Little League. He's pitching. He's catching. He's hitting well. So that's been kind of neat because I've always been a bit of a fair weather sports fan, but I do have really fond memories of playing wiffle ball baseball at school growing up or in high school, and certainly in that era of like the late 70s with the Yankees being on top. So it's been kind of cool to sort of to get invigorated and exuberant about baseball again.
But you're also selling yourself a little bit short there because you, my friend, you are maybe not anymore, but you were a great athlete as a kid. I mean, you really were. I mean, as a tennis player, you really were fantastic.
Oh, thanks. No, I don't mean to.
But I mean that influence
in terms of no. Yeah. I always liked sports, but I guess in terms of. I mean, I know you've always been, Eric. I'm talking to now, such a die-hard sports fan.
Oh yeah, that's true.
I definitely enjoy a game.
Right.
But this is one of the first times where so like my youngest. His first year in Little League, they sort of the teams take on major league team names. So he was on the Orioles. This is a couple of years ago now, and the Orioles were really not that great at the time.
Right.
And that though got me invigorated. Like I'd never really paid attention to the Orioles, and now they're like number 2 in the standings. They're really having a renaissance, and I'm all excited about it.
Right.
So that's what I'm saying. Like athletic, I always liked playing sports for sure, but I wasn't the kind of diehard sports fan.
Right.
That I witnessed in you.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It is interesting too, though. That the middle one is interested in the arts, having 2 parents. I mean, you and Nicole both being in the industry. That's so. Is that scary that you think that they want to follow the same path, or is it? Are you as supportive as your family was for you?
Honestly, like for me. It is what it is, it's who she is. So, I've got to support her in pursuing that.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's great.
Having lived through the ups and downs, yes, it's tough. But if that's, your calling and that's what you want to do, you have to at least give it a shot. And there too, Eric, you're so inspirational to me, with your Relo. I don't know how much you guys talk about it. But I mean, I was like, when you told me you were moving to Nashville, I was like blown away because I was like, to me, you're like the quintessential New York guy.
That's right. Yeah, I know.
And
Brooklyn boy
and you
forever.
Did it, you know? Yeah. So that's inspiring too.
Well, thank you. I really think, and maybe as I've been getting older, it's become even more clear to me. But it's really important to just do things and try them. And I never thought I would ever leave New York City. But you know, as a young man, I mean, you were traveling around. You were doing things that, you know, I really think were very mature. I mean, both of us, until, you know, my mom remarried, both of us were single moms. You know, that's what we had.
Yeah.
So a lot of that fell on us to figure out, you know, how to do things. And, you know, because we weren't like constantly watched all the time.
Right.
So yeah, I know, but in a good way too. I mean, you know, that both very responsible parents.
That's actually true for me too.
Yeah, but we have the
maybe
three
there's
of us.
something to that.
Yeah, and you know, but Chris and I spending so much time together growing up, you know. He was really much more adventurous in terms of like, oh, I'm going to LA to do this thing, or I'm going to, and I'd be like, wow, man, like I only know New York. That's all I know, and only small parts of it. So that was also.
It's so cool to see you guys sharing how you inspired each other.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
That's really cool.
So how do you find the balance though, Chris, between so you have two parents in your household, you and your wife, who are both pursuing the arts. You're both involved in that.
Right.
Where's the balance? Like, you know, there's no sort of one of you is the doctor and the other one is being the creative one. It's like you got two creative souls in the house. You know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, honestly, you know. We're still, you know, again, it's kind of like, as I was talking about, you know, the goddess part of it, like it's an evolving thing, you know, like we change, the world changes. So honestly, we're still figuring it out. Like in the course of our relationship, there have been times, you know, where I had the full-time job, you know, even if it was directing animation, so kind of still a foot in the artistic world.
Fans, they want to hear about that.
Yeah, sure. Let's talk about it. But then what we did was, you know, we also both had a fair amount of success as younger people, and then, you know, auditions got a little fewer and further between. So what we did was we basically opened up our own business unrelated to the artistic side of things, just to provide, but also to be able to have that flexibility of managing our own schedules and not having to report someplace from 9 to 5 every day.
When I saw your first Pilates studio in Brooklyn, I was just so impressed. I mean, it was a very handsome space, so well put together, and I can't believe that you're only a little bit older than I am, because you were so much more of an adult.
Well, I mean,
you and Nicole both.
Honestly, Dan, like, you know, that a lot of that is Nicole in terms of the presentation of things. Like she is, you know, she's got a design heart,
I've worked with Nicole.
A design soul, you know, that's definitely her thing.
It makes sense that I see how you guys are together, because you guys are there's a wavelength that just seems obvious that you guys would share, but she has this other aspect.
Yeah, absolutely, right. and you know, it's just a thing. Like over the years, I would come home and walk into the living room, and everything had been moved around, and I was like, okay, but you know what? After living with it for like 3 or 4 days, I'm like, you're right. You know what I mean? Like, and that's just her thing. And so the presentation aspect of the Pilates studios was all her. And then, you know, I was more of like the jack of all trades, like, oh, the toilet's clogged again. Oh, it's time to do payroll. You know, let's, there's a street fair. Can you carry out these 200-pound performers so we can put them on Court Street and show everybody what we do? So, you know, we balance each other out well that way.
That's amazing.
Yeah. That being said, we did that for about 12 years, and it was great. Made some wonderful friends, had some great experiences, but it's also a grind running your own small business. So this next phase was really like we were missing, you know, being more fully committed to the artistic lifestyle. So that's why we, you know, uprooted the family from New York and came back to Los Angeles. And honestly, it's a work in progress. You know, like it's been tough, but you know, we're sticking to our guns.
Well said. And what I was going to add into that is this might be also an opportune time because the strike is going on as we record this.
Yeah.
And, most people don't understand, or I believe most people don't understand, I'm not sure about that. Actors that make their living only off of acting is really a very small number.
Rare.
And so a more typical example, it's very rare. It's like 1% or something like
Yeah.
that. And I know that might be surprising to listeners because there are actors who make livings that, are exorbitant.
Yeah.
Right? Like being multimillionaire. I mean, most people would consider that more money than you quote unquote need.
Right.
But those, you're right. So when you make it, you really make it. But by and large, working actors, and I say this not as a qualification, but I say it with respect, are not that. And so having other things that you do to provide a good, environment for your children, right? A home and, those sorts of necessities, there's no shame, and it doesn't disqualify you as being an actor if you don't make all of your money from being an actor.
Yeah.
I just wanted to frame that for the audience.
Sure. No, I mean, it's absolutely true. And I feel like that's what this strike is about because it's becoming almost impossible. It's sort of a microcosm or a mirror of, I think, the larger issues in our society where, you're
There's too much on the extremes and there's not enough in the middle.
Right. Exactly.
I am glad that you made the move back there, though. I know that with, your career and the success and some of the bigger films that you were involved in and starred in, Firstborn, Manhattan Project, things like that, which is really that's like superstardom. Like that's like, I mean, I remember walking into every video store when they used to have those and they would turn the Firstborn box in a certain way and it's just you on the cover. Like, it's like, hey, that's pretty cool. That's my buddy right there. But, in the voiceover world, we sort of, we can play anything we can sound like, right? So in terms of like, I'm going to retire from this kind of character and move on to this character, it's a little easier in terms of the voiceover world than it is in the on-camera world because you basically start either getting, you're aging out of like, well, he can't play oh-so-sensitive son anymore because now he's like a, middle-aged, but he's not quirky enough to play character actor because he's, he's too good-looking as a middle-aged man. And all of these things, it's basically what
all three of us struggle with that. We're just too good-looking.
Right.
But anyway, go on.
But so when you told me that you were going back out there to pursue it at this point in your life, I was like, yeah, because you have
You're a different type.
You have you have the talent. I mean, and I'm not just saying this as your best friend.
Well, that's understood.
But I mean,
that's understood.
You have the talent, and I knew it was something you loved to do, and probably missed it. And maybe with the maturity of where you are in your life, going back to that innocence of youth, where you said it doesn't matter. Like, I just want to try this. I want to enjoy it. I'm not going to overthink it. I'm just going to do it again. I think it's full circle. That's kind of where you are mentally. Yeah, it would be great to get those gigs. And yeah, when you go up for an audition, you probably look and go, this would be a nice paycheck if I got this gig here. But I also think it's at a point in your life where you're like, I just want to do this. Like, I feel like I don't want to say what if. I don't want to say, man, I should have gone back out there and done this again in this next chapter of my life. So that, to me, is inspiring. And it just shows that your soul is an actor. That's who you are. And whatever category you fall under, how they're going to cast you, that's just, you're not in control of that part. But
it's circumstance. Yeah.
But you can still shine and you can still show them what you're capable of doing. So I think that's great.
No. Absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate that.
So, Chris, I mentioned before how much people want to hear about the directing stuff. And when you guys were just talking about casting, directors are in that room when these decisions get made. You said something to the effect of there's a lot about it is circumstance. And I just use that as a clumsy segue into anything that you want to say about directing some of the dubbing, which is how you and I got to know each other.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Oh, so many years ago.
Yeah, no, I mean it was a great experience.
And it's a combination too of what we were just talking about. You're doing a job that isn't acting, but it's creative. right?
Absolutely creative. And what's nice about it too, and I did experience this a little bit in my own acting career when, I had a few times where, I did something and then we were like doing it again, but another actor, their schedule had a schedule conflict. So I would be in the room, already having the role, but reading with everybody else. And I think, part of the
being a reader.
Part of the hard part.
Well, you weren't being a reader. You were already cast. But
I was cast, but I was being the reader.
That.
I was reading with the potential people to replace, whoever was not around.
Right. So for listeners, a reader is a person in the room when they're auditioning talent, and you really want your reader to have some acting chops so that you can actually create a scene. But you were already cast, but you were performing the function of a reader.
Right. And I guess my point that I wanted to make, which was very similar to running casting sessions for VO, it's hard when you're just an actor and you have your sort of horse blinders on and you give your audition and you feel like it went fantastically and then you hear nothing. That can be disheartening, disconcerting. The one nice thing about having fulfilled that reader role and also directing and auditioning a bunch of actors is you really begin to understand it's not personal. There's a million incredibly talented people out there, and there was just one person who fit this particular role an iota better than you did, and that was just reassuring just to see, oh wow, there's a lot of super talented people out there.
Yes, very well said. I can only reinforce that's what I took away from being in those situations. Yeah, and I mean sometimes, of course, there are people who come in and they don't know what they're doing. Or,
right.
They're very rare.
There's that too, but amongst the people with the talent, what was inspiring about it was to see, the creativity and the originality of the approaches that people came up with. You know what I mean? Yeah. For something that's basically the same set of words. Right. And people really put their own spin on it.
The interpretation.
Yeah.
And one thing that I think is so arresting and compelling about acting is, in comparison to other forms of creative expression, all of which are wonderful, but you really get this sense of humanity. I mean, that's what acting and its best examples feels like. Even if your participation is just as the audience, which is applies to most of the acting that we all experience. They just bring you into this moment of feeling like you're with a person.
Yes,
and that's unfettered, unambiguated by any other transference to music, which is wonderful, or sculpture, or again, I'm not poo-pooing any of the others, but that's unique to acting, and I think that's so cool.
It is so cool.
I think it's also helpful that you went from being on the stage to behind the scenes to get the perspective from the other side, from the production side, from the directing side, which also probably helps the acting side too.
For me, it's all part and parcel, and I'd always been interested. I mean, I don't know. I think you probably knew this, E, but so when my last year of high school, we were able to. Basically, the school I went to, you kind of finished your requirements in 11th grade, and then you could almost craft your own senior year. So you could take like AP courses to get a jump on college, or you could just take a minimum of courses and then go get a job, right? Yeah. So I got this job through my acting connections, working at a place, a warehouse that rented out all the top of the line, Panavision film cameras and what have you. And then that segued into that. From there, I actually became the camera trainee on the movie Something Wild that Jonathan Demme directed.
Yeah.
So I was always kind of interested in the behind the scenes part of it as well.
Of course, I totally forgot all your Super 8 stuff.
Oh yeah.
Right. Oh yeah.
Yeah, your Super 8
with you.
Stuff. Yeah,
you're in a lot of my movies.
I know. Chris would shoot Super 8 films as a kid.
We didn't. Okay, this is a whole other episode of that series.
But
let's get
but of
this.
course, talking about behind the scenes. Yes, of course, that was definitely something.
Anyway, to bring it back to the voice direction.
Yes.
So as I mentioned in part one, I think it was in part one. The interesting technical challenges of the different forms of acting, the theater, the film and TV. And then what was so interesting about working on the particular shows we worked on, most of them, we were dubbing into English existing animation. So not only does an actor have to really have, acting chops, but they have to have this very specific set of technical chops of being able to spin a line so that it's believable, sounds natural, but is matching this pre-existing what they call mouth flap. So that was something, that really narrows it down. And both of you guys are just pros at it.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. That there's a definite necessity to that. I don't know, Chris, if you would agree that I think most people who dub also have some musical capacity.
Yeah.
I think there's a relationship to knowing how to fit a moment into a timing.
It's rhythm, right?
Yeah.
That's what I mean by timing. Exactly. Yeah. That's a better word.
Yeah.
Also, guys, I didn't mean to shoot down the Super 8
No.
I mean, I didn't.
What you just?
But that really would be I would love to hear more.
Oh
about
no!
that.
I mean, if there in 50 years of friendship, I'm sure we could have 50 different episomes about different
my
times.
God.
So we don't need to do that. But
I'm
yes,
sure. I'm sure. Okay,
but the filmmaking
okay.
stuff that's definitely part of our memories.
Yeah. I share some of that too. I mean, I think a lot of people do, even if they don't become filmmakers or actors. It's just fun to do.
Yeah.
Well,
but anyway.
and the great thing now, now is with the technological advances, like there's pretty much nothing stopping you from going out and making your own movies if you want to.
That's right.
Back then, it was a little more complicated. It was like, you have to film the thing and then send it off to the lab and wait for it to be developed. And,
Yeah,
and
I talked about having a dark room.
3-minute.
I had a dark room in my dad's house. I talked about that on an earlier show. Actually, I just shot my latest music video on my iPhone. That's the only thing I used was my iPhone.
Right.
Right. It's amazing.
Right.
It's amazing. And dubbing is so fun to do. I mean, when you get good at filling that flap, as it were, that sounds dirtier than I meant. It's like a game, though, Chris, you paid me a great compliment that I hold dear to this day. When I'm feeling down, I just make myself feel a little bit more special.
What'd I say?
You said something about. Well, we were getting something done that was overdue, I think, or
what?
Many occasions.
As usual
at our company,
where the deadline. For some reason, the deadline was breathing down our necks.
Yes.
I don't know what exactly it was.
Right.
I'm just supposed
imagine
to show up
that.
and say things. Yeah. So things had to get done, and I think you said something like, "Not everybody can roll through 30 cues in whatever the time frame was that we did that. I forget, but I took that as like." I won a good dubbing award.
yes,
I got, and not that you are affirmative. You provide good energy to a record, and you're never a jerk, which usually doesn't get anything done. Although there are circumstances where you have to be firm sometimes with people. So anyway,
I call those.
It is true.
I call
and
those
then,
a flappy. I wanted to have a category called.
I
call you.
I remember you using that term.
You've won a Flappy Award. Yes.
Yeah, and the other thing too, it's like again, just getting back to the artistic side of it is like to be. It's almost like in a way. It's like you're artistically hamstrung because you have to deliver the line in this particular rhythm. And to be able to do that and have it sound inspirational and not stilted, I think that's the art of dubbing.
It's
pre-existing.
the Ginger Rogers thing.
Yeah.
Right. You have to dance backwards in heels.
Right. And it's amazing. And I remember I forget if you. If you were in this session, I want to say it was a Yu-Gi-Oh thing, but Robert De Niro came in.
Oh yeah, Bobby D. Yeah, he came in to watch Dan. Yep, he came in to watch Dan.
And I remember, I definitely did one session. I don't know, like if you were out of town or something, but I did one session where that happened, where he walked in with his kids.
Yep.
I was like, okay, we'll go to this time code and, rolling, beep, beep, beep. And he did one take and I was like, okay, nice, moving on. And Robert De Niro was like, one take? He couldn't believe it.
Right? I think he actually also said, I don't think I could have done that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's just it's different. I mean, we worked with some pretty interesting people that were known for film and TV who were not used to dubbing. Some projects that we did.
Right.
There.
It's a very specific animal.
Right. I remember working with Christopher Lloyd on something, and he each performance was different, and they were all great. But that doesn't match lip flap. That doesn't change. So the producer asked me to give him line readings. And I'm like, I'm not going to do that. I figured out a way to get him to lock to what I needed. But he basically was like, can you help me learn the timing of the flap so that I can give the read I want and it fits. It's really it's 50-50. It's half the creative acting side and half being very technical.
Yeah. Well, so also, Chris, I opened this episode with how nice you are, but I think a better way to describe this talent that you have beyond your other talents is that you're really good at understanding the social balance in a situation. And I almost directed something at 4 Kids, and I was tried out for a week, but I failed, not because I didn't know what I needed to do to get a performance or get things to win to get or at least considered for the flappies, right? Understanding how to get that from an actor in a situation is a different thing than understanding the other elements of production, and that you're working with a producer and forces beyond that producer, and you were so much better at that. And when I washed out, you were there, literally there for me. You were like, hey, you want to go out? You had things to do, but you're like, you want to hang out for a while? You want to go, out for lunch or something? Get a coffee? Because you knew how.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'd been there myself,
Mm-hmm.
You understand. Yeah.
I understood.
And so you're not just a very good actor and director, but also being able to understand how to work in the biz. Is to put it in the most superficial way.
Yeah,
that's another skill, just like we were talking about with how to dub. It's a thing.
Thank you, Dan. I appreciate that. I mean, I think I do have a certain amount of talent. I wouldn't say. No, I don't mean acting talent, just talent at that side of it.
I see.
But wouldn't call it my forte, though. I mean, it's more like I just like to connect on a human level is the main thing for me. I'm not a great networker. I don't quote unquote play the game.
Oh, I'm horrible at that.
But it's just the human connection that interests me and that I'm comfortable with.
Right.
Yeah, and with any production, we don't, you can't.
And you're very good at that too, Eric.
Thank you. But I mean, but I butt heads a lot too with I don't have as much patience, I think, in those arenas sometimes because I don't have a high tolerance for stupidity. But the other side of it is that I think,
and yet you still return my calls.
Well, there's that. I also think that with any production team, especially when you're dealing with other creative minds, you can't pick and choose who you're necessarily working with in especially where we were when we were doing that stuff at 4 Kids. So what team you were assigned to as a director, what producer you were working with, what writer you were working with, it was really just okay, the luck of the draw. So sometimes those producers would request specific, I want to work with Eric, because maybe I'm very disorganized and can't get my stuff together, and I know Eric's going to drive the train. That's great. But just understanding how the ebbs and flows work in those situations, that is part of production. And it's not to say, yes, was that situation for you? Yes, it was probably disappointing for you because your abilities were such that.
Oh, but in hindsight, it was totally the right.
But it was the right thing.
It played out the right
because
way.
it was the wrong ingredients. It was just the
yeah.
wrong ingredients. So
those weren't gonna work together. No. But also, it's like, I think of this from I'm a comic book fan. Surprise, surprise to listeners and friends. But when you have a different team on a title, it changes the whole thing.
Exactly.
Right.
And there are some writers that work in a certain way with some illustrators. And you see, like, this is also true of, like, with the films of Clint Eastwood. It's all his production company. He always works with the same people.
Right.
There are people that they know that they work well together.
Right.
And that's part of what we do with Crossing the Gods. Everyone in that show we like to work with, and in addition to them also being very good.
Yeah,
right?
and the
Like,
continuity thing that you're talking about too. It's like I remember getting the first like negative feedback about season 3 of something I was working on, right?
Okay.
And I'm going,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
well, I'll give you that if that's if you want to criticize that, but I'll also push back with, okay, so seasons 1, 2, and 3 had a different staff of writers, and seasons 1, 2, and 3 had different animators, and seasons 1, the things changed that had nothing to do with even the actor or even sometimes the director changed. And so many pieces, go into this that, I would love for every show that I started that was a success to have maintained the same core crew. My goodness, that would be fantastic.
Those are forces beyond your control.
Yes, we couldn't do that.
So all of these various levels of capacities, talents, abilities, some people might call them intelligences, like how to read a room or whatever it might be. So these all configure and combine in, I guess all of our lives in different ways. But I want to ask this other provocative idea. The hero's journey has this stage called Apotheosis. Literally, that means to become godlike, which I know we can all relate to, right? But the sense of it is, and everyone can relate to this, there's some moment that you've had where you felt like, I'm really in the zone. I'm really accomplishing what it is that I want this to be about. And that may be like a period where you felt in the highest command of your skills, or it might just be a moment. I don't know. But give us your sense on how that fits in for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that for me, it ties back to what we were discussing earlier. That sense of fearlessness and wonder and child, like approaching the world like a newborn babe. Just the cycle of life. And for me, I probably felt at the top of my game, pinnacle, what have you, in that earlier part of my career. But in one way, and yet in another way, I feel that way now because I've just matured so much as a person and feel like, whatever I could put into an artistic pursuit would be so much deeper on so many levels. So it's interesting.
Right. So it's
like
not the fame. It's not the fame that is the pinnacle. It's more.
Well, you sort of, maybe you think it is, but maybe it's not.
Right. Well, that's how do you what is the success you're measuring?
Right. Yeah. Right. Exactly.
So you also were talking about, being a reader and having an appreciation for how valid and varied all of those interpretations were from the various actors. And, we were talking about the capriciousness of being cast.
Right.
But when you were directing, and I have an opinion on this because I have my own experience with this, but how much did you learn from actors while directing about acting?
Oh, I mean, tons every day.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, and again, it's that thing of like the exact same thing I talked about earlier, being a reader of like, you can give your direction or whatever, but then the person takes it and puts their own spin on it, and you're like, I never would have thought of doing it that way, and so so it opens your eyes, you have your take, they have theirs, and you have to be receptive to all the possibilities, right?
Right. When you were directing stuff for 4 kids, we all understand there's this balance between the best of all possible takes and getting it done.
Yeah.
Tell me about how you lived with that balance.
Well, fortunately, I tried to cast,
Right.
to really put all my efforts into casting the people that, I said. But I mean, there was a core group that just, I didn't have a worry in the world. It was like, okay, this is not going to be a problem. But
Wayne Grayson, always reliable.
Right, exactly.
So on and so
Those
forth.
guys. But, obviously trying to expand the pool. I did a lot of,
Yes. It's important.
yeah, just casting a wide net, no pun intended, contacting, university acting programs around the city. Hey,
Right.
you run this program. Can you just send me 10 or 15 of the guys that you really think have the chops and just audition them, and quite a few people came out of that. And then it just becomes the thing of, you've got to sort of nurture them while they learn the technical aspect of it. They got the acting chops. So, some of those sessions are tough, no doubt about it. But
Tough in terms of you're not getting the result in the time you want.
yeah, well,
Or-
fortunately, it balanced out because of the people with a bunch of experience would just get so much done so quickly that it bought me some time.
Right.
And I think there was an understanding all the way around, that
There needs to be.
we do
Yeah.
want to deepen our talent pool.
Yes.
And that's going to take a little bit longer. So nobody at 4Kids ever came up to my desk and was like, "What are these crazy overruns? You're taking 10." So when I needed the extra time, I could do it. I would shuffle some stuff around and just book an extra session with the person who was, just learning the ropes. And, because of our backgrounds, I think we could, you do the best you can. And unfortunately, sometimes there's some people that it's just not their thing. So I used them for one role, and then it became evident, like, this is not going to work out.
Right. Not their bag. And they are wonderful actors in their own right. It's
Absolutely.
you shouldn't expect everyone to have that. whatever
Absolutely.
thing is.
And I, as I said, I did cast a wide net, and sometimes it was heartbreaking. Like there was one guy who was a middle-aged character actor guy who came recommended to me, who unfortunately had a heart condition, had a pacemaker, and he stepped into the booth to read for me, and the microphone, so sensitive, was picking up the ticking of the pacemaker, and I was like, I'm so sorry, but you're just not going to have a VO career because of that aspect of it.
Wow.
And he was a wonderful actor, so.
Right.
Yeah, we learned a lot about how to, what is it? Good, cheap, and fast. You can pick two of them, right? It's like
Sure.
guys, so much of the pressure that was put on us. It's like, well, if you want this done on time and you want it good, we got to really crank it out, and you're going to have to bring in the better guys. And then the other side of it was like, but you don't want to keep using the same guys on every show. Well, then
God,
then
no.
back
Then you
off.
have to
Well,
work
that's-
with
I
us.
mean,
You
yeah.
have to work with us.
I mentioned trying, my hand at directing for 4Kids. I later went on to do that for NYAV Post for a couple of years.
Oh, yeah,
as
yeah,
well
yeah.
as doing a script adaptation and whatever. So all of which was I really appreciated all of that. But you don't want to be cast in every show, right? And if you're being cast a lot, you realize they can't keep doing that.
Right.
Right? So, just like Eric did, you become a part of the show making.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And Eric, is shepherded an appropriate term, or just, Eric helped you into that, I assume.
Oh, yeah, no.
You will benefited a lot from his,
Oh, yeah, no. I mean, I owe him everything for that. I got the job because of him, and it was just one of those points where it was a transition. I had been with Nicole for quite some time. We had just gotten our first apartment, and, reality.
Right, your life stages.
It was
Right.
like, oh, I need to make a living. So
But you were the right
so it was-
candidate for it. You were definitely,
Oh,
yeah,
for sure.
yeah.
Absolutely.
But
It was,
you did it so well.
Thank you.
The whole thing up there too was, so much of what I did was I started things. I'd start shows and then hand them off. And as we got more and more shows, it's
it's interesting. It's interesting.
Who can do what I do.
If I can interrupt you for 1 second about that, because when you were talking earlier about whatever flack you would get online, well, I mean, my recollection of it was, they would go to you to get something off the ground because they know you could get it off the ground.
Yep.
And then they'd take you and move you to the next new thing.
That's right.
And somebody would step in and take over for you.
Yep. That's exactly what would happen.
That's how I remember it.
Sometimes it would go seamlessly and it would be like that no one would know that, but it would be more than just changing me. I don't want to take the credit for being like, well, I'm the only director that can direct this show, right? Or else it's going to go, it's going to tank.
Yeah.
But
right, we know that's what you think, but you don't want to say it.
True. I'm not going to say the quiet part out loud, but if you remove me, the director, and you put the assistant director in, great. But if you remove the director and then put the assistant director in, and also replace the entire writing staff, and then also replace the music people, like you're going, how many times can we to remove what the magic was and still expect it to be the same? Not that the change could. I mean, that'd also be a good thing, right? I do like to see how someone else took over something that I worked on, and it's like, oh, that like you were saying, Chris, in terms of reading with different actors and how they made different choices.
Right.
It's like your choices. I mean, you directed me on the show that I created the character for. Right. So I'd come into the room to work with you as Kaiba, and you're the director, not me.
Right.
At that point.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Right? And your take on it is, even though you probably would be like, well, you kind of know what to do here. It's like, but hey, but at this particular moment,
I'm going to go get a cup of coffee. I'll come back in half an hour.
I'm the actor and you're the director. But yeah, so no, it was great. Right. It was great to have such a good staff of talented directors.
In that specific example, one of the main values the director brings in that circumstance is understanding what the story is and the moments are.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So even though you're an actor very familiar with the character, you don't necessarily know all that.
No.
Right.
No.
Right.
Yeah, and his input could shape the scene in a different way that I didn't expect, and be like, oh, well, this makes total sense. Let's do that. So yeah.
There you go.
But yes.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. There's also the other side of the coin when a seasoned director has been replaced and somebody who, for reasons, are in the position of being a director, and you're the talent, and you know that you know more than they do. Mm-hmm. That's also just an interesting tension that occasionally happens.
Yeah,
right.
But I never
absolutely.
felt that. I never felt that way with you, Chris.
No, thanks.
Because you knew what you were doing.
Thanks. Yeah, no, but that is true. That is true. And I think you just try to, patiently guide them to what they need to be doing.
And sometimes it's fun because they let you do whatever you want to do, and you're like, no, I know what to do here.
Yeah.
And it's, sometimes it's freeing.
We won't bring up the Orson Welles thing, but yeah.
I just played that. I just played my collection of the celebrity outtakes for Lindsay. We were taking a drive somewhere, and I was like, I'm going to play you some of the best. And I played her that. She's cackling while driving. I thought she's going to crash the car. But yes, just listen to that Orson Welles one.
Legend. It's the Peas one? Is that
Yes.
Yes. He's reading commercial copy for Peas. Yes. He wasn't satisfied with the copy.
Google it.
All right, my friends. Well, so when people are wanting to hear from Christopher Collet and your fans, is there anything you want to express to them?
Well, just how appreciative I am. Lately, I've been doing a fair amount of personal appearances related to my very first movie when I was 15 years old, and it was an independent horror movie called Sleepaway Camp.
Yes.
And it's become, almost unbeknownst to me, like sort of a cult classic. Mm-hmm. This year is its 40th anniversary.
Wow.
Oh my God.
So I've been doing sort of I know you guys do appearances at the anime cons, and I've, even visited you there, but I've been having that experience for myself with this. And it's really something because of that too, as I was talking earlier about just being an actor and almost like being in a vacuum when it comes to auditioning and then not hearing anything, it can kind of feel that way too when, you do these films or whatever and you're just dealing with your reality. You don't realize, the impact that you have on people's lives. And when you get to meet them face to face, it's really something,
Yep.
Yeah. I have been learning that, especially in this last year, although I've made appearances before, but I've made more appearances this year. And in a sense, I wouldn't say I really had no idea, but actually that's how it feels. I really had no idea.
It is a special experience. And for those that are sort of curmudgeons about being there and can, then don't do it because it's really, such a bonus. It's such a special experience that is not what we planned when we planned to be entertainers, that, oh yes. And that at some point we're going to do this. I would also like to ask Chris, if he has parting words of inspiration for those that want to follow their own paths and their own passions. Do you have something that you can tell them from your own experience?
No pressure. Just say the wisest thing.
No, okay. I mean, look, it's not easy, but just keep your nose to the grindstone, work hard, and believe in yourself.
Yep. No, that's great. That's great. I love the fact that when we bring our guests on the show and we get a chance to talk, that everybody's got a different path and everybody's got a different journey, and there's no one way, there's no right way. And it's just, I hope that when our listeners hear what we're talking about, that they say, oh, well, you know what? Maybe that experience is kind of what I've been dealing with, or I never looked at it that way, and that they feel compelled to give it a shot. Because that's really what life is about, is really just try. Just do it.
Definitely. Go for it.
And when you will look back, you did an amazing job, I'm sure, getting those payroll elements out when you needed to with the Pilates studio. But my guess is you have more meaningful remembrances of the creative work you've done.
Yes. I mean, look, it's particularly doing the big movies or whatever. It's exciting, all that kind of stuff. But, I have fond memories of the other side of the coin, just running a small business too, because, one of the nice things about that is that, again, as I was saying, as a performer, sometimes you feel a step removed from the people, that you're interacting with. In everyday life, running your own small business is really like you're dealing with people face to face. So those are fond memories for me as well. For different reasons.
Right. Well, thanks for adjusting that, because I did slant that question, but and I think that's a great affirmation. I mean, hell, when I was bussing tables at a brewery, there was something, I understood it was all a part of, a grander scheme, right? Right. There's absolutely a huge value to all of that. So
no, for sure. And look, I think that for a large portion of history, artists, they always had another gig. I mean, look at Chekhov,
right.
He was a physician. So.
And he also steered the Enterprise.
I knew you were going there. I knew you were going there. I left the door wide open. I'm like, when is Dan?
Thank you for hesitating.
I didn't have the door open. It went whoosh. That's what it did. We're geeks too.
Sorry, I sidetracked that, but yeah, exactly. Well, Christopher Collet, thank you so much for spending time with us and our audience. I'm very happy that we've had the opportunity to present you to them, because they've been asking about you regularly. And what are some of the appearances you're making going forward?
So I guess it being kind of Halloween month, there seems to be a lot of horror type stuff coming up. I will be at Cinema Wasteland in Cleveland, Ohio, the weekend of September 29th through October 1st. Then I'm heading to the World Drive-In Jamboree, hosted by Joe Bob Briggs, October 6th through 8th in Las Vegas. Then I'll be in Burbank at Monster Palooza, October 13th to 15th. And finally, at Scarefest Week in Lexington, Kentucky, October 20th through 22nd. So if anybody out there listening to this podcast lives in those areas, come on by. It's a really great time.
Do you travel with your decapitated head?
You know, it's a story. You know, when we do the little meet and greet sessions or the talkbacks.
Yep.
I tell that story because there was 2 of them, and I never received them. I don't know where they are. I don't know who has them, but they're out there somewhere.
Yes, we need to find that.
Probably get Indiana Jones on that.
Yeah,
totally.
It belongs in a museum. All right. Well, I am so glad again to have spent time with you today and those appearances. You got a busy October.
Yes, it's going to be a busy month. Definitely.
Well, I hope people take advantage of the opportunity to get to know you in person. Conventions. I met a lot of people at the last convention where they had never been to a convention before. And so for anybody who's considering, if you've never done it before, conventions are always a good time. There's always a positive energy. People are there because they're passionate about what it's about.
Yeah, no, totally. And it's an interesting mix. Like, you know, I've probably done maybe 6 or 7 of them now. And with the horror fans, which is probably similar to anime, there's like a core group who do travel long distances. So they're always there. And then it's filled in with all the sort of local fans who, don't get to travel all around, but they always come to the one that's in their area. So it's a cool mix.
Right. That's awesome. Well, Chris, again, good luck with that, and thanks for being with us today.
Thank you.
And Eric, our pleasure. And Eric, as always, I look forward to every time we get a chance to talk.
As I do with you, Dan. Thank you.
And thanks to you, all of our listeners and followers who join us every week on YouTube and on some other platforms. We're on Spotify and other podcast providers. And we look forward to any time we get a chance to hear from you, either in person or in the comments, so please keep that up. And as always, whenever you tune into The Heart of the Cards, you can count on a conversation about creativity, inspiration, and dealing with what we're dealt.
Thanks for listening to The Heart of the Cards with Dan Green and Eric Stuart. We hope this conversation in some way spoke to you. Whatever your journey, we look forward to crossing paths again in the next episode. This is Veronica Taylor, and on behalf of Andromeda Productions, we wish you well.